When I bought my modest home in a tranquil, tree-lined neighborhood, I envisioned a peaceful life parking my car without hustle, grilling in the backyard, and swapping stories with friendly neighbors under the glow of porch lights. After years of hard work, this was my sanctuary, a place to escape the chaos of the world. But that dream was shattered by Karen, the self-appointed HOA enforcer, whose obsession with control turned a simple parking spot into a terrifying ordeal that left me staring down the barrel of a gun. What started as a minor disagreement spiraled into a nightmare that exposed a bully-esque reign and sparked a neighborhood rebellion that would change our community forever. It all began one crisp Saturday evening when I hosted a small get-together at my house. Friends filled the street with their cars, and I parked my sedan in the open spot right in front of my home, a place I'd used for months without a whisper of trouble. The night was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of good conversation until a sharp, insistent knock on my door cut through the joy. I opened it to find Karen, 2 doors down, standing on my porch like a sheriff from a bad western. Her clipboard was clutched like a weapon, her oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head, and her lips were set in a tight, judgmental line. Without so much as a hello, she launched into a tirade. "Your car is blocking my driveway, and it's a clear violation of HOA rules." Her voice dripped with authority, but her accusation didn't add up. Stepping outside, I checked my car was parked cleanly in front of my house, leaving ample room for her to access her driveway. "Karen, I'm not blocking anything," I said, keeping my tone even. "This is a public street, and there's no parking sign." Her eyes narrowed, her face flushing with irritation. "It's against the rules, and I'm reporting you to the HOA," she snapped, brushing off my explanation. I stood my ground, calmly but firmly. "I've parked here for months, and it's not blocking anyone. This is ridiculous." That's when her demeanor shifted, her posture stiffened, and her voice dropped to a menacing hiss. "You don't want to make me angry," she said, stepping closer. "Move your car, or I'll take matters into my own hands." The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Before I could respond, she spun on her heel, reached into her purse, and pulled out a handgun, pointing it directly at me. "Move your car, or you'll regret it," she said, her voice icy and her finger hovering dangerously close to the trigger. My heart slammed against my chest, the world narrowing to the glint of metal in her hand. A parking spot? This was about a parking spot. This wasn't the quiet neighborhood I'd signed up for. This was a scene from a nightmare. My mind raced, but years of handling high-pressure situations kicked in. I raised my hands slowly, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Okay, Karen, I'll move the car, but you need to leave now." "This is insane." She held her ground for a moment, her eyes burning with defiance, then lowered the gun and stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. I stood frozen on my porch, the weight of what just happened sinking in. As soon as she was gone, I bolted inside, locked the door, and called the police. My hands shaking as I recounted how a parking dispute had escalated into a life-threatening confrontation. The officers arrived quickly, their faces a mix of disbelief and concern as I described Karen's gun-waving tantrum. They took my statement seriously, but warned that without witnesses or video evidence, charging her would be an uphill battle. True to form, Karen denied everything, claiming I'd provoked her, and that no gun was ever involved. Frustrated, but unwilling to let it slide, I contacted a lawyer the next morning. They explained that while criminal charges might be tough without hard proof, a civil lawsuit or restraining order could be viable if Karen's behavior was part of a pattern. Determined to find out, I started talking to neighbors. What I uncovered was chilling. Steve, a kind-hearted neighbor with a boisterous golden retriever, shared how Karen had threatened to call animal control over his dog's harmless barking. Another neighbor, Lisa, recounted how Karen had bullied her into tearing down a perfectly compliant backyard shed, threatening city fines if she didn't obey. Others whispered about her relentless nitpicking lawn heights, mailbox fonts, even holiday decorations, all enforced with a venomous zeal that left the neighborhood on edge. Karen wasn't just a stickler for rules, she was a tyrant wielding her whole role like a scepter. Armed with these stories, I marched into the next HOA meeting, heart pounding but resolve unshaken. The room was packed, the air thick with tension. I stood before the board, detailing Karen's gun threat and her history of intimidation, my voice steady as I called for accountability. Karen sat at the front, her face a mask of barely contained fury. But the board's response was maddeningly vague. "We'll review the situation." It wasn't enough. I couldn't let her continue terrorizing the neighborhood. That night, I drafted a letter to every homeowner, laying bare my encounter with Karen's gun and including anonymized accounts from neighbors about her bullying. I spent the next day hand-delivering it, knocking on doors and meeting residents who'd been silently suffering under her reign. The response was electric. People were outraged, relieved to know they weren't alone. Many shared their own run-ins with Karen, from threats over minor landscaping choices to harassing phone calls about trash can placement. The neighborhood was ready to fight back. A week later, Steve called with big news. The HOA had scheduled an emergency meeting, spurred by the uproar my letter had caused. I rallied supportive neighbors Steve, Lisa, and a dozen others, and we arrived at the meeting with a petition signed by over 50 residents, backed by witness statements documenting Karen's pattern of intimidation. One by one, neighbors stood up, their voices trembling but resolute. Steve spoke of the animal control threat. Lisa recounted the shed debacle. Others shared stories of Karen's relentless harassment over trivial matters. I took the floor last, presenting our evidence and emphasizing that Karen's gun-waving wasn't a one-off. It was the culmination of years of unchecked power. The room fell silent, all eyes on Karen, whose usual swagger had crumbled into a defensive scowl. She didn't speak, her hands gripping her clipboard like a lifeline. The board, overwhelmed by the outpouring, voted to suspend her from her HOA role and launch a formal investigation. Cheers erupted, quiet but powerful, as neighbors realized we'd taken the first step toward reclaiming our community. But Karen's house, just 2 doors down, was a constant reminder that this wasn't over. Days later, I caught her staring at me from the sidewalk, her eyes glinting with resentment, but her lips sealed an uneasy standoff. Rumors spread that she was quietly rallying allies to form a new HOA, one where she could rule unchallenged. I wasn't about to let that happen. One organized a community meeting, inviting every resident to discuss our vision for a fair, transparent HOA. The turnout was staggering. Over 60 people packed into a neighbor's garage, their voices buzzing with determination. We shared more stories of Karen's tyranny, from her threatening notes about non-compliant flower beds to her screaming matches over kids' bikes left on lawns. The consensus was clear. Karen's reign had to end for good. We drafted a new petition, this time demanding her permanent removal from any HOA leadership role and reforms to ensure no one could abuse power like she had. Over the next week, we collected 75 signatures, each one a testament to the neighborhood's awakening. At the next HOA meeting, we presented our case with military precision documents, statements, and a unified front of residents who refused to be silenced. Karen sat in the back, her face pale, her usual bravado gone. The board, faced with a tidal wave of evidence and community resolve, voted unanimously to remove her permanently and rewrite the HOA bylaws to prioritize transparency and fairness. The room exploded in applause, neighbors hugging and high-fiving. A weight lifted from our collective shoulders. The neighborhood transformed almost overnight. Sidewalk chats replaced wary glances, barbecues popped up where fear once lingered. Karen faded into the background, Her influence shattered, but I stayed vigilant. Weeks later, I saw her walking her dog, her head down, avoiding eye contact. She was no longer the terror of the block, but I knew her type bullies don't vanish quietly. Steve overheard her muttering about taking back the neighborhood, a sign she might try to claw her way back. So I doubled down, joining the new HOA board to ensure accountability and hosting regular community meetups to keep our unity strong. This fight wasn't just about a parking spot or even a gun. It was about dismantling a culture of intimidation and building a community where respect and safety reigned. From a single, terrifying moment to a movement that changed our neighborhood forever. We proved that no one, not even a gun-wielding HOA Karen, could break our spirit. If this story lights a fire in you, share it to inspire others to stand up to bullies, because every neighborhood deserves to be a sanctuary, not a battleground.